Good day, everyone. This little video is just a background of Living Earth, where it came from, why I started it, and what the hopes and dreams are for this organization. So, to start off, we need to ask ourselves, why did we create this organization? And the reason is, it's the question of what is wrong with our current ways of how we live at the moment, and how could we move to a more sustainable, happy, and good life for everyone in Namibia. So we look at the backgrounds and we look at the possible option of what we can do. We want to create what we call the lekker lewe. So I did a lot of reading, starting with COVID and before even, about how we can change things in Namibia for the better for everyone. And this really, the more I read, the more questions I got, the more books I wanted to read, the more answers I was seeking. It's been a rabbit hole, it's been a long time, and I read a lot of books. And the organization Living Earth is pretty much a synthesis of all of that. So the question, what is wrong? Here you can see families in a village collecting water. They have to walk far to get water. That's part of what is wrong. So the key thing that is wrong in Namibia is there's three things mainly. Mostly it's inequality. We live in the most unequal society in the world in terms of income and wealth distribution. So this is now in financial terms and in terms of Namibian dollars, assets, and that creates an unhappy society. Part of the reason for this is our education system is not really working. We create a lot of people that have very little skills when they come out of school, even though we spend a lot of money on our schooling system. Another reason is how the land system is set up, whether people have access to land, whether people have the opportunity to create some livelihood for themselves where they are, and that they have ownership of that land. The other reason is that the neoliberal capitalist ways of fixing this don't really work. We have a lot of NGOs working in the country. Yes, there are some successes, but we're not creating systemic change to make Namibia good for all. Another big elephant in the room is climate change. If you look at what our rainfall situation is at the moment on the left-hand side, you can see the blue areas there at the top. This is where we can have rain-fed crops like mahangu, and even they are failing. But if you look into the future and you look at the year 2065, you see that the blue is all disappearing. So the average rainfall is less and less and less and less every year. So average rainfall goes down every decade. And it's not only that, it's also that the variability of rainfall increases, which means the wet period are even wetter, and the dry periods are even drier. So this creates the problem that rain-fed agriculture is really struggling, where people would get maybe 9 good harvests out of 10 years. They are now, in the future, they will probably get 1 good harvest out of 10 years, because it's either too much rain or it's too little rain or it's in the wrong time. So this is really creating a problem where most of the people's livelihoods depend on on rain-fed agriculture, or rangeland agriculture, just the same. The problems are the same. The third problem that we have is population growth. Poverty and little education leads to more population growth. Namibia did make some improvements in this, but the trend is now going in the wrong direction. People are having more kids again because poverty is endemic. If trends continue, we need space and food for 6 million people in Namibia by 2100. We are now just under around 3 million, but we'll double the population in the next 75 years. Also, half of our population is 20 years or younger. We need to add 300,000 households in the next 15 years. So this is 300,000 families more getting established than what we have now. They all need a livelihood, they all need income, they all need space, they all need water. We don't really see any good progress in that direction. So that means that there will not be jobs for everyone. Even if we work really, really hard create an industrial society, even if with all the green energy hype and all that, we maybe create 100,000 jobs. That's not even enough for the people that we already have, and we will double the population in the next 75 years. So that dream of being an industrial nation the welfare state, it doesn't create happiness. We won't be the Germany of Africa. We just don't have the skills, we don't have the resources, we don't have the market close by. And there's 200 other countries that are in competition. So we need to help people to get productive where they live. We need to make the villages productive. We need to have people that live in slums organize themselves in such a way that they can be productive locally, create their own jobs where they are. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, we don't want to end up like this, right? This is the development path that many countries took. They created heavy industries, they created big cities, they created big towers of apartment blocks, a lot of environmental waste, a lot of damage. Really not a nice life. You sit in traffic jams half of your life. You never see your family. You work in a sweatshop for meager wage. And then 10 years later, another country does the same that you do, and everything was in vain. So it's not a good way to go. We don't want to first pollute our rivers and pollute our air and create all the industrial waste and all the infrastructure. And then later we want to go back to nature. So that doesn't really make sense. We want to fast forward to a world that is good for us without creating all the waste at first. All right. So we need to look and ask ourselves, what really is it that makes us happy? It's not the money. It's not the Rolex or the fake Rolex even. It's not the Lamborghini. It's not all the stuff you see on the billboards. What makes us happy is, as a human, if we look at the research, I did a lot of reading on that, on happiness psychology. One of the big books I can recommend is the one by Martin Seligman. One of his books is called Flourish. He's done quite a lot of books on this topic. But what he eventually says is the things that make us happy, and I'm not saying content, I'm actually meaning happy as a person, is that we are happy if we live in a trusted community. The people that are around us, we know them. The people we see every day, we know them. We trust them. At least we know who we can trust and who we can't trust. And we live in a community that is trusted. So typically your dorpie, plattelandsdorpie, your small village, your small town in Germany, those are the communities that are most happy. We are happiest when we have adequate food and shelter. So it doesn't have to be much, but it needs to be adequate. We need to be able to feed ourselves. It's not about caviar every day. It's about having good nutrition and enough of it. We are also happy when we control the ownership of our land, when there's nobody else that has control over where we stay. And we need to have control over the suburb or the village that we live in, and not only the yard that we have. Because what our neighbors do influence a lot of whether we are happy or not. And we need to have decision-making power on that. And that decision-making power should not be vested in somebody else that comes from a place that's 2,000 kilometers away. But the community itself needs to be able to make those decisions to a very large extent, and then collaborate with other villages close by for regional and national issues. All right, so decentralization is important. We are also happy if we have time for family and friends. Having to slave away at a job all hours of the day doesn't make us happy if we then never see our family and our friends. So we need lots of time for them. We're also happy if we have equality in wealth, culture, and values in the space that we live. We are happiest if the people around us sort of like have the same kind of wealth. It's also important that we live in tune with and close to nature. We need to have our fingers in the garden soil. We need to have our fingers in compost. Then we're happy, not only from a health point of view, but it is good for our soul. We want to spend time in nature and not just in a concrete jungle. It's also important that we have something meaningful to do. Just having a job for the sake of a job or having a universal basic income and sitting under a tree eventually does not make us happy. If we don't give back, if we hoard, if we just want to compete with the Joneses and we want to make sure we have more than them, it creates a lot of unhappiness. So giving is the creator of happiness. And in our society, very few people actually do. All right, so this is what a happy society looks like. A couple examples from all over the world. Small village in picturesque Switzerland. Obviously, they have a lot of money, but they are close. They have got a lot of decentralization. They do a lot of local decision-making. People are very much involved in politics, and they shape how life works in their community. And that doesn't mean that there's no rules. Freedom does not mean everybody can do what they want. Freedom means that the community themselves can decide how the community lives and who lives there and who does not live there. And that's important. And then you create the trusted community with the rules that it makes itself to a very large extent, and then people are happy. People are happy to live by the rules that they establish themselves. The other example is a village in Nepal. It's one of the happiest places in the world. You don't see the Lamborghinis and you don't even see roads there. But people are happy because they live in a country that takes happiness very seriously and that works hard towards that. And people are not rich in terms of money sense, but they're happy with what they have and how they live. All right, if we look at Namibia, a lot of those things that we need to be happy, we already have in place in the traditional villages. Mostly trusted community, people know each other. Not everybody can just move everywhere where they want. So they have control over who lives there, who doesn't. So a lot of the building blocks are already there. What is missing is well-being. It's in the sense of enough food, enough nutrition, the knowledge that even if it doesn't rain that much in the next season, you will still be fine. So those are the things that are missing. And then obviously some material well-being and comforts as well, such as water in the house and light at night and things like that. So what are the solutions of getting from our current ways to how do we want to live, and what do we create? How must Namibia look like if we want to be happy, and how do we get there? So first thing we need to do is we can look at housing. We can create our own houses from natural building materials. If we know how, we don't need to buy cement and things like that. We can build very nice houses with very little money with natural building materials if we know how and are willing to put in the work. And that's what a community can do. It's very difficult to do as an individual, but together it's very easy to do. That's what villagers did for thousands of years. They helped each other to build each other's houses. So here you can see an eco-village, naturally built, natural building, built from natural materials in Taiwan or Thailand. Looks like very modern, everything is there. So what people want is to build intentional communities and then help themselves build a better life for themselves. So an intentional community is where people choose to live together and where they grow their own food. People understand and they want to move into villages where they have more of a say. It's away from stressful modern way of life. If you live in such a village and you live and work locally, then you don't need to commute, you don't need to fly, you see your family, all of those things are important. It's back to nature, it's back to community. And the big thing is we can build these ourselves. If we know how, we can build with a lot of local materials and we don't need a lot of money. Right, so this is what it could look like. This is a lodge outside east of the airport, built from straw bales and mud and thatch. So you can do this yourself. You can build from straw bales, from sandbags, from compressed earth bricks, from wattle and daub. You can do cob building. There's hundreds of ways of building your own, depending on what material you have locally. This is another example of really nice natural building houses, modern building houses, but they're really, really, really nice. Right, the other thing we need to do is we need to feed ourselves. Having the veggies and the fish here is not an accident. This is all grown in an aquaponic system. So we can feed ourselves. And we can do that, and we should do that by adopting permaculture. Permaculture is a design principle that takes everything into account that is around you, and you can grow a lot of food and a lot of variety of food locally. The more varied, the more sustainable, the more resilient your operation. And if you do that as a community, it's even nicer. You'll be much more productive than doing it alone. That includes organic farming. So part of your food production operation should be gardening. Organic includes a lot of animals as well. You can make your land very, very, very productive if you use permaculture, regenerative agriculture, and organic principles. Another very important concept is the concept of agroforestry and food forests as part of large-scale landscape restoration. In these concepts, the idea is to layer a lot of trees, a lot of food-growing crops, mostly perennials, but also underlying with veggies in dense systems that are highly productive, restore the landscape, and are really productive in terms of food production for a village. If you want to have extensive grazing animals, you should use holistic grazing because that allows you to regenerate the land while having a lot of livestock. Right, another thing that you can do to make yourself and your village drought-proof and create food is to create fodder. Now, fodder is where you sprout grains, and that creates these thick mats of sprouts which you feed your animals. Nutritional value is really, really high. The balance between carbohydrates and proteins is very good depending on the grains that you use. Most people use barley, but you can use even mahangu and anything like that, what you find locally, ideally from grains that are grown organically and locally. Then you can also include insects in your farming operation. Most of the really intensive smallholder farming operations in West Africa and so on, they use insects, highly useful and very productive in intensive farming operation. Another thing that you can do to produce a lot of food locally in a small space is to have beds like this. This is a picture of India. It's very weather dependent, but if you've got a nice climate as in the north, you can grow azolla, which is a small fern, or you can grow duckweed, which is a really little small aquatic plant. But these plants, if you have them in beds like this with water, filled with water, and the ferns or the duckweeds floating on top, you add some manure, and then these beds produce a third of the biomass every day. So every day you can take a third of what is you see here, the azolla, you can take it out, you can feed your animals, and next day the bed will be full again. So this is a really nice way to produce a lot of food fast. Right, another one I mentioned already is aquaponics, where you can produce food with around 90% less water. So if we have very little water in our village, then aquaponics is a good way to grow food. I have a small aquaponics operation here at my house. I use about 3 cubic meters of water a year, and I produce cucumbers and tomatoes mostly, some strawberries and fish obviously, and that's really nice. All right, so I believe every village should have a communal greenhouse at its center so that it can produce food. Obviously, you can produce food outside the greenhouse, but if you have a shade net house, you are more productive in terms of veggies, and it's also protected from animals, from squirrels and mongoose and birds and whatnot. So it's a good place to start. So how do we make the change to have the whole of Namibia full of trusted, abundant communities that grow a lot of their food locally, that trade regionally, that create things that make them productive and happy, much like the Israelis have done with the kibbutz and the moshavim, for example? How do we make that change? So the idea is that we upgrade the traditional rural villages to more modern intentional communities where everyone finds a good, meaningful, sustainable and resilient life. That means that the people that are there learn about how to do these things, get access to the assets that they need to start creating these productive systems, and then they're able to feed themselves and not only live on mahangu and bamboo. So in my view, the villages will be the center for all the training, money lending, service delivery, networking, decision-making, lobbying, etc., etc., etc. Everything needs to go on is based around the village. Currently, we have the village, and then 10 kilometers away, we've got a school, and then 50 kilometers away, we've got a clinic. And then agricultural extension officers, they come by car whenever. So that's not really an efficient model of distributing knowledge and making places productive. So in my view, the village is the center of everything, and then reaches out regionally. In the urban areas, I envisage that we build dense urban communities, like the eco-village house that I've shown you. A lot of people in a small space, but really, really nice and productive. And instead of slums, we should have little units, little villages where people come together, organize themselves, help themselves, build themselves, learn themselves, and get a support village by village, suburb by suburb, and even in a suburb, smaller units, like maybe 10 or 20 houses together. And that will allow us to rewild half of Namibia. It will make us all happy, and it will allow us to be much less intensive on the land so that wildlife can thrive again. And if everybody has a stomach full and has a good life, then there's much less pressure on natural resources, especially endangered ones. So, how do we go from the traditional village to a very nice modern village without having to go through creating an industrial society where everybody slaves away at a 9-to-5 job, rather a 5 in the morning to 9 in the evening job, and then being totally unhappy and then wanting to go back to nature? What are the building blocks that are needed? So how do we do this? Now, that's one of the questions that I had, and then I had to read more. And one of the books that I selected was a book called How Change Happens. So change is something you can't force, but you can find ways to make things that people change. And people typically change by example. So you need to find some people that start the examples. And the good thing is, according to all the research, it's only 3.6% of a population that needs to go into a new direction, and then suddenly other people will follow. Everything that we adopt, there are some pioneers that do it first. And then people see it, and then they change, and then they want it as well. So in terms of the Namibian population, we need only to convince 100,000 people to go a new way, then the rest of the change will follow. There's also this adage that if the people change, the leaders will follow. So we can jump up and down as much as we want, toi in the streets for a change. It won't really change anything unless the people make a change, and then politics will follow. So we need to make the change, and then policies will follow later. So we only need to convince 100,000 people, and that isn't that bad. It's only around 140 villages that need to start moving in a new direction of the 6,000 villages or so that we have in Namibia. And that still sounds a lot, but if we break it down and say, okay, let's start with 1/10 of that. Let's start with 14 villages. These 14 villages can then be our regional learning centers. So we identify 14 projects, ideally one in each region, in each bioregion, in each catchment area, and then we start from there. Then people will automatically change. We just need to build these 14 villages. So I believe one of the things we need to do is create a think tank. This is really the core of Living Earth, is that we come together as a group and we think and we research and we see what works and what doesn't work in other places. And then we try the same here. So in that sense, we also need to be a do tank, not just think and put papers out. I think that's happening enough. We need to actually do things on the ground. So part of that is that we create these sample villages. I'd like to call them as well bioregional learning centers, where we actually put into process all the permaculture, the organic farming, the production, the intensive production methods with rabbits and chicken and ducks and quails and 50 different veggies and a greenhouse and aquaponics and fish and whatnot. Get these villages productive and then use them as centers where other people can see and experience as well, especially children. Then I envision that we create some cooperatives. People organize themselves, we just help them cooperatively produce and market, find markets, do research, support each other. The cooperatives can help with funding, assets, and. We want people to be able to own the supply chain themselves and grow with it and create an asset for themselves. This is why should be a cooperative rather than a corporate coming from outside. Then we want to help people create businesses where they are. In order for them to be productive, it's not only about food for themselves and food for the market, but it's also some cash generation activities and ideally businesses that the whole of the country uses or that we can export products from. So here's an example from a business that is created in Israel, in the desert, where there's nothing except abundant sunshine. They've created a business growing coral in the Negev desert, and the coral is used as stents in heart operations. So they produce for the medical industry. They make a lot of money. It's very nice. They have a lot of aquarium, very nice fishes that they use to clean the coral. They need very little water, and they use the assets that they have, the abundant sunshine and the low pathogen environment. Because it's so dry, there are not many diseases in the water that they have. So that's a business that can be created. Somebody just needs to do it. But I believe that we that are doing the think tank, we need to publish these ideas to people, that they see what is possible. And then they experiment and then they do stuff themselves. We have in Namibia these startup fund competition every now and again, but that is not enough in my view. In my view, there's a lot of things that people need to build, a lot of businesses people need to build in terms of sanitation and biogas, and that we can show them what is possible and then let them build those businesses. Right, so in order for anybody to build a business and build a village, they need access to stuff that makes them productive, so productive assets. This is everything from light to power to machines like oil presses and pellet makers and balers and seed and water purification and clean cooking, and. And all of that needs to be financed. There's good ways to do this. For example, my company, Olusheno, does the same for solar systems that just produce light. We have a TV kit, so small systems that can create light, charge phones, maybe have a TV with a bigger system. And we sell them to anybody that wants these, any Namibian. So they have to have an ID. They have to pay a small deposit, and then they get this system, and they can pay it off over time. And the way this works is that if they make a payment, they get a little token, like a prepaid meter token that you know from the city. They punch this token into their battery system, and the system switches on. If they don't buy a token, if they don't pay for their system, the system switches off. So in this way, customers pay off the system over a period of time, maybe a year, maybe 2, maybe 3, depending on the asset. And they get access to this very easily and very affordably. The systems are not cheap, but they're very affordable because we give them to the customer immediately. They start saving, buying buying candles, buying paraffin, having to charge their phone at the shebeen for a lot of money, diesel for the generator, and. So they save a lot of money. That money they use to pay off the system. So essentially, the system only costs them the little deposit that they pay. And because of that, the systems are really affordable and customers buy them. And also because they switch off if payments are not made. This is a model that works for my company Olosheno, which is a social enterprise as well. So the idea is that people get access to these kind of assets through companies like Olosheno and others that can make these kind of models available. So there's a lot of work to be done to get all of these other units funded in this way. All right. The other thing that I think is needed is that we build a schooling system where we teach permaculture, organic farming, and. A little bit of training is already happening, but I foresee that people should have access to this for free on the internet. A lot of the training that is happening currently that's available is actually costing a lot of money. Not only in terms of actually getting the training, but getting the people to the training and have them stay in town for the training. So I want training to be available for free online so people can just train themselves. And this should be Namibian content and not just YouTube links from other places. In terms of this, people need access to a smartphone. This is something that my company Olosheno is also selling on this rent-to-own model for very small payments every month. So people can have access to smartphones for very little money and teach themselves. So if that works, then there's not really need for extensive farming. We can farm intensively on small space, even producing a lot of sheep. For example, there's a guy in South Africa, he's producing 700 sheep for slaughter on 5 hectares using a fodder system. He does not have any issues with theft, with poaching, with cheetahs, with leopards, with jackals. He just doesn't have those problems because he's farming intensively on a very small scale. So those operations are there. We just need to show people that they work. If this works, then we don't need large areas to create industrial crops. We don't need to import food. We feed ourselves as a nation. We feed ourselves locally. We trade regionally because not everybody will produce quail eggs, for example, but we don't need huge chemical-based industrial farming operations. This also removes the human-wildlife conflict. As I mentioned, if you farm intensively, you can protect your land, building hedges, building electric fences around a small area, and you don't need to have a conflict with wildlife at all. Doing that would allow us to remove a lot of the fences, ideally all of them, and it would allow us to rewild Namibia. So that's a dream that's far into the future, but we need to do this. Otherwise, we will never be able to have enough land to keep the cheetah population from going to extinction. Same with the pangolin, same with the hyenas, same with the wild dogs, and so on. All right, so this also solves the land problem. If we can be productive as a community, as a village, in a small space, then not everybody needs a big farm to be able to send their kids to university. That will make us sustainable and resilient. Whether it rains a lot or not, we will be comfortable. All right, so how does all of this fit together? I've mentioned all the building blocks. You can see this is sort of like a network where each part that we are building feeds the others. So the think tank creates the vision that's the North Star of what we think Namibia should look like. To that effect, I wrote a book. Initially, I basically jotted down my ideas. I called the book Fast Forward Namibia. So we fast forward from the traditional villages to the happy, abundant, intentional community villages without going through industrialization. I'm now calling it the Namibia of our dreams, and I'm hoping that we write the second edition together. I would like to invite everybody that is in the field of regeneration, community building, upliftment, nutrition, and that we join forces and we write that North Star, that our vision of Namibia together. All right, so we also create a network. The network creates a co-op. The co-op helps funding productive assets that are used in the village to build the abundant, happy life, to grow more food, The food is sold to the co-op feeds the network, the assets get paid off, the village gets more funding, now they've got assets as collateral, they can get more funding, they can buy more assets, they can produce more food, which they can give to the co-op and. So this is a circle that's going around and around and around and around and around. All of this, what we do, all the villages, all the experiments they do, we collectively put together into the school. The school then educates the villages again, more food is produced and. All the knowledge that we have, we dump into the wiki. The wiki is something that I already started. There's the growyourfood.africa wiki online. There's around 300 articles now on everything producing food in the village and building a business in the village. And that should expand to around 1,000 articles, written in a way that anybody in a village should be able to understand it. In simple English, just a couple of pages. Each article is maybe 2 or 3 pages, gives the basics, links to a lot of YouTube videos on how things are done. So very easy to understand. So we need to build all of this, and I hope you will join the Living Earth to keep building and start building and keep building all of this. And then we want to scale. So in order to get more people to know about all of this, permaculture, organic farming, and, we've created the Food Grow Challenge together with the Capricorn Foundation. The Capricorn Foundation is supporting this financially together with other funders. They see this as an extension of the Food Waste Challenge that they did a couple of years ago. To start off, we are just starting a project as a proof of concept. We have a site in Grootaup where we are going to do a couple of interventions in terms of permaculture, organic farming, supported by experts. And we showcase the dramatic effect it has when you know what you're doing and you put in the effort. So it's not about putting money into assets like water tanks or something. It's just like how you work the land and improve the land. And we've got a very nice candidate there with Temapo. He's already doing an awesome job, and we are just helping him to be even more productive on his land. And that we use as a showcase. We create a lot of videos. We create an online course where people can learn the basics in very easy way. And we then have a proof of concept that we know this is working and that it's easier for us to get funding for the real big Food Grow Challenge, which is a nationwide project that we want to launch, where we want to involve the media heavily. We want to have some influencers on social media, really create a big tum-tum that everybody knows about it. And we have big cash prizes, big prizes. So we entice villagers to get growing, to get learning, to dig into the soil and make things happen. And through that effort, the villagers that win the prizes and do the most effort, we want to then convert into the learning centers so that we have our 14 learning centers going. So that's going to be in the future, in the next couple of years. Hopefully we can start with that next year after we've done the proof of concept and we've seen some dramatic results. So that's one of the big efforts. The other things, as I mentioned, the other building blocks, the book, the vision, the North Star. I've written that. It's online. Everybody's welcome to read it for free. It's not a long read. It's about an hour. Basically, more detail about what I've shared here now in the video. The idea is that we co-write the next version, as I mentioned. We're also creating the Living Earth Expo. We've had our first expo at the Waldorf School in 2023 in October. It was really, really hot. Everybody was dead tired by 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But it was a very good networking. We had a lot of people there from a lot of initiatives that work in the direction that we want to see the Namibia of our dreams. We had some 40 talks. We have very nice ideas of what we want to do, how we want to do the next expo, hopefully in 2025. Then we are also building the Living Earth Marketplace. In the Living Earth Committee, we've created a subcommittee that is looking after the marketplace. It's already built. It's online. The URL is store.livingearth.africa, Living Earth with a hyphen. And we are now just testing the final things. The marketplace is a place where anybody that is producing something or giving services for something that is relevant to what we want to build. So whether it's compost or worms or crickets or design services or a shredder that you can rent out or seedlings or seed or food that you grow, all of that can be traded there. And we create a community that supports each other there. So it's ready, it's live, you can pay by pay today. We just busy writing the final manuals so that it's easy for everybody to understand how it works. And then you can create your own space, you have your own vendor page. So I really invite everybody that's producing something, even if you're only making candles at home, to use the marketplace to sell your stuff. Then we have the Permaculture Namibia website. That's a website for the club where we list permaculture projects that are happening in Namibia. I think we've got around 20 projects already listed there, which is really nice. Urban gardens and permaculture farms, agroforestry sites and things like that. Really exciting. All right, and then the Grow Your Food, that's the wiki I mentioned already. So in short, I've made a list of all the building blocks and to-dos. There's a lot of to-dos. These are all the building blocks. A lot of initial to-dos. If you want to help, if you want to volunteer, if you want to be part of this, please let me know. It's very exciting what we're building. We also want to always create a network and increase it. The Permaculture Club, this is what most of you already know. It's a WhatsApp group, very nice, 87 members. But we also want to engage other organizations such as the Boy Scouts, churches, NGOs, and like the Rotaries, and then connect with them and create a bigger network so that more and more people know of what we're doing, what we're aiming for, and we build it together. On the right-hand side, you see some of my team from my company, Olusheno. We've got a very nice network as well. Lots of customers in the informal settlements and in the villages. So there's a very good way for us to reach a lot of people. Here's a picture of the outlets, the retail outlets that we have for Olusheno, where we are selling our solar home systems. So that's a really good way to get the word out. Every few months, we print a booklet and we print stories about what we do in Living Earth, also in the booklets. So there's really good reach. There's very nice farmers WhatsApp groups with a lot of people on there as well that we can use to get the message out. All right, and then lastly, about how Living Earth is organized. Currently, it's a voluntary association with only 5 members. So that's sort of like the core team, and we want to expand that. And we are currently planning and organizing around us being a decentralized autonomous organization. Sounds horrible, but actually all this is it's an organization that's loosely organized on the internet, and it rewards work with our own little thank you voucher. And it's a merit-based organization. So those people that do the work, that work hard, that make an effort, that contribute, they have more say in the organization. So as the organization grows, those people that contribute, they have the say of where the organization goes. And not, for example, the people that only put in money or the people that started it. So it's not like a normal company. It's not like a normal NGO. It's not like a club where every member has a voice, whether they contribute or not. So it's a merits-based organization. And we value the value that you create. That gives you more voice. And we also want to work with vouchers, for example, on the marketplace, that you get a discount if you're a contributing member. The more you contribute, the better discount you get, things like that. So if you contribute to building any of the building blocks of Living Earth, then, for example, you don't pay any fees on the marketplace to market your products, something like that. So we are busy building that. If you're interested in how that works and get involved in the Living Earth committee, building that next stage, please let me know. You're more than welcome to join and take part. Right, that's pretty much it. That's Living Earth. I hope you join us on our journey.